Okay, so today we're going to dive into something kind of different.
Oh,
Yeah, we're going to be looking at waste management,
huh.
but not just like your typical trash pickup.
Right.
We're talking about a company in India called Antony Waste Handling Cell Limited.
AWHCL.
Yeah, exactly, AWCL. And they've basically figured out how to turn trash into treasure.
Yeah, you sent over their Q2FY25 investor presentation
Hmm.
and their unaudited financial results.
Right.
It's pretty remarkable what they're doing, turning like this global challenge into a real opportunity.
Yeah, so before we get into the specifics, can you give us a little background on AWCL? Like, who are they? What exactly do they do?
Sure. So AWHCL is a public company and a leader in the Indian solid waste management industry.
Okay, so SWM.
Yeah, SWM exactly. And they've been around for over 20 years now.
Wow.
They operate in 9 states and partner with over 23 municipal corporations.
So they're a pretty big deal then.
Yeah, they've really established themselves as like a major player in the industry.
Okay, so 20 years in the waste management game, they must have seen a lot of changes.
Definitely. The industry has evolved a lot in that time, and AWHCL has been at the forefront of a lot of those changes.
So what kind of services do they actually offer? I mean, it's more than just picking up trash, right?
Oh, yeah. It goes way beyond that. They handle everything from collection and transportation
Okay.
to processing, landfill management, and even waste-to-energy solutions.
Wow, that's a pretty comprehensive approach.
It is. It's all about creating a closed-loop system,
Yeah.
minimizing waste and maximizing resource recovery.
So let's break this down a bit.
Sure.
When you say collection and transportation, how is their approach different from, your average garbage truck?
Well, for one thing, they have a huge fleet of vehicles,
Okay.
including electric ones, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And all of their vehicles are equipped with GPS tracking.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's all about using technology to optimize their operations, make things more efficient.
That makes sense. So the garbage gets collected, it gets transported. What happens next?
So then it goes to their processing facilities,
Okay.
where they sort and segregate the waste.
So they're pulling out the recyclables and stuff?
Exactly. They separate out the recyclables, the compostable materials.
Uh-huh.
And get this, they even recover materials that can be used to produce refuse-derived fuel.
Refuse-derived fuel. What is that? Like biodiesel or something?
It's similar in the sense that it's a fuel source, but it's actually made from the non-recyclable parts of waste.
Wow, so they're basically squeezing every last bit of value out of our trash.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It's becoming a really important part of the waste management industry, especially with the growing demand for alternative fuels.
So they're turning trash into fuel. That's incredible. And you mentioned landfill management. Do they actually own and operate their own landfills?
They do. And one of them is actually one of the largest single-location waste processing plants in all of Asia.
Whoa, seriously?
Yeah, it's in Kanjurmarg. And it handles a mind-blowing 90% of Mumbai's waste.
90%? That's insane.
I know, right?
Mhm.
It's a massive operation.
So they've really become experts in this whole landfill thing.
Definitely. They've got the experience and the expertise to handle these large-scale projects.
And on top of all of that, they're also generating clean energy from waste through their waste-to-energy project, right?
Exactly. Their WTE project in Maharashtra was the first of its kind in the state. It's a great example of how they're pushing the boundaries of what's possible in waste management.
This all sounds really impressive, but it also sounds really expensive.
Yeah, I mean, waste management is a capital-intensive industry for sure.
So how are they managing all this financially? What do the numbers look like?
Well, their Q2FY25 investor presentation shows that they're doing pretty well.
Okay, give me the detail.
Okay, so their total revenue actually dipped slightly compared to the same quarter last year.
Huh, interesting.
But their revenue from MSW processing jumped up by a significant 22%.
Okay, so even though their overall revenue was down, their revenue from processing actually increased?
Exactly. Which makes sense given all the innovative processing solutions we've been talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so what are the key financial takeaways? What are the big numbers?
Well, their EBITDA for Q2FY25 came in at 48.5 crore rupees,
Okay,
with a PANET of 15.34 and an EPS of 4.3.
got it. And what about their debt?
They've got a very healthy net debt-to-equity ratio of 0.4x.
So not too much debt. That's good.
Yeah, they're in a good position financially, and their revenue growth over the past decade has been pretty remarkable.
How remarkable are we talking?
Well, back in FY10, their revenue was 109 crore rupees.
Okay.
Fast forward to FY24, and they hit 896 crore.
Wow, that's phenomenal growth.
It is, and the market seemed to agree. They recently issued some equity shares under their ESOP scheme.
Right.
And they've got a solid care credit rating.
So they're doing a lot of things right. What's the secret to their success?
Well, I think their commitment to environmental, social, and governance principles is a major factor.
ESG.
Yes, ESG, exactly. Investors are really paying attention to that these days.
That makes sense. So they're not just focused on profits, they're also committed to sustainability.
Right, and they've got some pretty impressive stats to back it up. They've managed to avoid over 1.19 million tons of CO2e emissions.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. And on top of that, they've got a really smart growth strategy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about their strategy. What are they doing that other companies aren't?
Well, for one thing, they're not resting on their laurels. They're actively pursuing new projects,
Okay, like what?
especially in emerging areas like biomining and biomethanation.
Biomining and biomethanation, those are some big words.
I know, right? But they're actually pretty simple concepts.
So break it down for me.
Sure. So biomining is basically like excavating old landfills for valuable resources.
Wait, so you're telling me there's treasure buried in our trash?
I could say that.
That's wild.
It is. And with rising resource scarcity, it's becoming more and more important.
Okay, and what about biomethanation?
That's all about breaking down organic waste in a controlled environment to produce biogas, which can then be used as a renewable fuel source.
So basically turning trash into fuel again.
Pretty much. It's amazing what they can do with waste these days.
Yeah, it's incredible. So they're tackling the waste problem from all angles and finding ways to turn it into something valuable.
Exactly. And the Indian waste management industry is expected to double in the next 5 years.
Wow, so there's a huge opportunity for growth there.
Definitely. And companies like AWHCL who are investing in these cutting-edge technologies are well positioned to capitalize on that growth.
It sounds like they've got a bright future, but it also sounds kind of risky. I mean, what if these new technologies don't pan out, or what if the regulations change?
You're right, there are always risks, but AWHCL has adopted a very strategic, cluster-based approach to expansion.
Cluster-based approach, what does that mean?
So instead of spreading themselves thin all over the place, they're focusing on bidding for projects in clusters
Okay.
to maximize profitability and efficiency.
So they're concentrating their efforts in specific regions where they can really make an impact?
Exactly. And they have a very robust evaluation process for the projects they take on.
Okay, so they're not just jumping into things blindly.
Definitely not. They're very careful about the projects they choose.
But every business faces challenges, right? What kind of hurdles is AWCL facing?
Well, the auditor did raise a concern about the timely recovery of certain trade receivables from 2 municipal corporations.
Oh, so they're worried about getting paid on time.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something to keep an eye on, but it's not necessarily a red flag at this point.
Okay, so some potential financial bumps in the road. Anything else we should be aware of?
Well, there's also an ongoing income tax dispute stemming from a search that happened back in 2021.
Oh boy, that doesn't sound good.
It's not ideal,
Mm-hmm.
but the company is disputing the adjustments and has filed appeals.
So it's an ongoing legal battle? We'll have to see how that plays out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But overall, I think AWHCL is in a pretty good position.
Okay, so despite some potential challenges, it seems like they're doing a lot of things right.
Definitely, they have a solid track record, a strong financial position, and a clear vision for the future.
Awesome. We've covered a lot of ground here, from their wide range of services to their impressive financials and their commitment to sustainability.
Yeah, we've only scratched the surface, though there's still so much more to explore.
Like what?
Well, in part 2 of our deep dive into AWHCL, we'll delve deeper into those emerging trends of biomining and biomethanation.
Okay.
And we'll take a closer look at their groundbreaking waste-to-energy project.
Sounds fascinating. Can't wait to learn more.
Me too. It's a really exciting company to be following right now.
All right, see you in part 2.
So yeah,
Welcome back. So before we got into all the financials, we were talking about,
biomining and biomethanation.
yeah, it almost sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, you know?
I know, right? But it's real, and it's happening now.
So can you explain how it actually works? Like, what exactly is biomining?
Sure. So basically, biomining is the process of using microorganisms to break down organic waste in old landfills.
Oh.
And this allows for the recovery of reusable materials like metals and plastics that would have otherwise been buried forever.
So it's like composting, but for landfills.
Exactly. You're basically speeding up the natural decomposition process.
And not only are you reclaiming valuable resources, but you're also reducing the environmental impact of those old landfills.
Right, it's a win-win situation.
Okay, so that's biomining. What about biomethanation?
So biomethanation also involves breaking down organic waste.
Okay.
But in this case, it's done in a controlled environment to maximize biogas production.
And biogas is that stuff you can use as fuel.
Yep, biogas is primarily methane, which can be used just like natural gas.
So you're literally turning trash into fuel.
Pretty much. It's pretty amazing technology.
It is, and these technologies are only going to become more relevant as the amount of waste we generate continues to increase.
Absolutely. India's waste management industry is expected to double in the next 5 years.
Wow, that's huge.
It's a huge opportunity for companies like AWHCL who are investing in these cutting-edge technologies.
Speaking of AWCL, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about their existing waste-to-energy project.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that it was the first of its kind in Maharashtra.
Yeah, the project was inaugurated by Prime Minister Modi back in August of 2023.
Wow, so it's a pretty big deal.
Definitely, it's a truly integrated project.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, it combines pre-processing, composting, power generation, and landfill management, all in one site.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's located in Pimpri Chinchwad, and it generates 14 megawatts of clean energy.
14 megawatts. That's enough to power a small town.
Exactly. And they sell that energy back to the grid under a long-term agreement with the Pimpri Chinchwad Municipal Corporation.
At what price?
5 rupees per unit.
So they're not just generating clean energy, they're also making a profit from it.
Exactly. It's a great example of how sustainability and business success can go hand in hand.
And it's making a real difference for the environment.
Oh, absolutely.
How so?
Well, they're using recycled water for the entire operation, and they estimate they're saving around 700,000 tons of CO2 emissions annually.
That's equivalent to taking like 150,000 cars off the road each year.
Pretty much, yeah, it's a significant impact.
That's incredible. I'm really starting to see why AWCL is considered a leader in this industry.
They're walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly, and it sounds like they're not stopping there.
Nope. They're applying their cluster-based approach to their waste-to-energy projects as well.
Right. Can you remind me what that means again?
Sure. So basically it means they're focusing on developing waste-energy projects in clusters
Okay.
rather than scattering them all over the place.
Makes sense.
This allows them to leverage their existing infrastructure and expertise in specific regions.
Right. So they're not spreading themselves too thin.
Exactly. They're being strategic about their expansion.
And you mentioned earlier that they have a very robust evaluation process for the projects they take on.
Yes, they look at everything from the scope and scale of the project to the tender conditions and the financial viability of the municipal corporation they'd be partnering with.
Speaking of municipal corporations, what was that issue the auditor raised about the timely recovery of certain trade receivables?
Right, so the auditor flagged some concerns about AWCL's ability to collect payments from 2 specific municipal corporations on time.
How much money are we talking about here?
Hundreds of lakhs.
Hundreds of lakhs. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's definitely something investors should keep an eye on.
For sure. And there was also the income tax dispute. Can you refresh our memories on that?
Sure. So it all started with a search operation by the Income Tax Department back in 2021
Okay.
at a couple of the company's business premises and the residential premises of some of the directors.
Sounds serious.
Well, during the 2024 fiscal year, the company and 2 of its subsidiaries received demand orders
Okay.
related to 5 different assessment years, ranging from 2015 to 2023.
And what were those demands all about?
The main points of contention seem to be the disallowance of certain expenses and the addition to taxable income.
So AWCL is disputing these adjustments.
Yeah, they've filed appeals.
So it's an ongoing legal battle. Has the company set aside any reserves to cover potential liabilities?
Unfortunately, the financial statements don't give us any specifics on that,
Okay.
but they do mention that management has gotten opinions from outside experts and conducted their own review.
And what's their take on all of this?
Well, based on their analysis, the management seems pretty confident that they'll be successful in their appeals.
So they're not panicking.
Not yet,
But
any.
still, it's something to keep in mind.
Definitely. But it's good that they're being transparent about it.
Transparency is always a good thing, especially for a company like AWCL that prides itself on good corporate governance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their diverse board, their ESG focus, all of that points to a company that takes these matters seriously.
It's great that they're holding themselves to a high standard. Now, before we move on, I'd like to zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture. We've been focusing on India, but waste management is a global issue. Where does India stand in the global waste management landscape?
That's a great question. The global waste management industry is a multi-billion-dollar market, and India, with its sheer volume of waste, is becoming a major player.
So India is not just dealing with its own waste, it's potentially becoming a global leader in finding solutions.
Exactly. The challenges India faces in managing its waste are immense, but so are the opportunities.
So companies like AWCL, who are developing and implementing innovative, scalable solutions, could become global leaders in this field.
Absolutely. They have the potential to really make a difference on a global scale.
What you said about scalability is interesting. What does that mean in the context of waste management?
It means developing solutions that can be easily replicated and implemented in different parts of the world.
I see.
AWHCL's expertise in areas like MSW processing and their commitment to sustainability could be incredibly valuable in other markets that are facing similar challenges.
So what we're seeing in India could potentially be a blueprint for the rest of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's exciting to think about the possibility.
It is. It's really inspiring to see a company like AWCL making such a positive impact while also achieving commercial success.
Absolutely. They're demonstrating that addressing critical environmental challenges can go hand in hand with creating economic value and generating positive social impact.
We still have a lot to cover, though,
Like what?
like their massive Conjurmarg facility and all those abbreviations they use in their report.
Don't worry, we'll get to all of that and more in the final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Antony Waste Handling Cell Limited.
I know it's been a pretty fascinating journey, hasn't it?
It really has. And, we've learned so much about their innovative solutions and their impressive financials and
Commitment to sustainability.
yeah, exactly. And, it seems like they're really well positioned to be a major player, not just in India, but
Globally, potentially.
yeah,
All right.
exactly. And speaking of scale, we still haven't really talked about their massive Conjurmarg facility.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You sent over some information on that.
I did. It's like one of the largest single-location waste processing plants in all of Asia. It's just mind-boggling to think about.
I know. It's hard to even imagine the sheer size of that operation.
So can you give us like a breakdown of what exactly is happening at Conjurmarg?
Sure. So they're handling a whopping 5,800 tons of waste per day there.
5,800 tons a day.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? That's basically 90% of the total waste generated in Mumbai.
90%? That's insane.
I know it's a huge undertaking. And that's where they have their bioreactor landfill and a sanitary landfill.
Okay, wait a minute. You're throwing around some more of those industry abbreviations again?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sometimes I forget that not everyone speaks fluent waste management.
No worries. I appreciate the refreshers.
Okay, so a bioreactor landfill, or BLF, is basically designed to speed up the decomposition of organic waste.
Okay, how do they do that?
They control the moisture levels and add microorganisms to the waste to get things moving along.
Ah, so it's like composting on a massive scale.
Pretty much. And the gas that's produced during this decomposition process, which is mostly methane, can actually be captured and used to generate energy.
Wow, so they're really squeezing every last bit of value out of the waste stream.
Exactly. That's the
Oh.
goal. And then there's the sanitary landfill, which is a more traditional type of landfill,
Okay,
but it's still carefully managed to minimize environmental impact.
right.
So they use liners to prevent leachate, which is that liquid that forms as the waste decomposes,
Okay,
from contaminating the surrounding environment.
makes sense. So between the BLF and the sanitary landfill, they're able to process an enormous amount of waste in a relatively environmentally sound way.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't stop there. They also have a material recovery and compost facility at Conjurmarg.
Oh, what?
A material recovery and compost facility, they sort and separate recyclable materials there.
Ah, so they're pulling out valuable materials before the waste even goes to the landfill.
Exactly. And they're also producing compost from the organic waste, which they can then sell. It's all about resource recovery and minimizing what actually ends up in the landfill.
It seems like a really efficient system.
It is. They've really thought of everything.
Mm.
And their Q2FY25 investor presentation does a great job of breaking down their different revenue streams. Yeah, it really highlights how diversified their revenue model is, which helps to spread their risk.
Okay, so what's their main source of income?
Their main bread and butter is collection and transportation,
Okay,
which accounts for 62% of their revenue.
that makes sense.
They have 16 ongoing contracts in this area with an average duration of 7.7 years.
So that's a pretty stable revenue stream.
Exactly, it is. And then MSW processing brings in another 23% of their revenue.
Okay.
And this includes everything we've been talking about.
Yeah.
The sorting, the segregation, the composting, the RDF production.
Okay.
And their 4 ongoing contracts in this segment have an average duration of 23 years.
23 years. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
I know, right? Talk about long-term revenue visibility.
Seriously. So they're not just doing well in the short term, they're set up for success in the long term as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then they generate the remaining 15% of their revenue from contracts and other services.
Okay, like what?
Things like mechanized street sweeping and the sale of scrap materials, odds and ends.
So they really have thought of everything.
It seems like it. And, all of this together is why their financials are so strong.
Right. They've shown consistent revenue growth, a healthy balance sheet, and a clear commitment to sustainability.
It's really impressive to see.
It is, and they're a shining example of how a company can be both profitable and environmentally responsible.
I agree. They're really setting the standard for the industry.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the bigger picture.
What do you mean?
Well, we've talked a lot about AWCL's success in India, but the world is facing a massive waste crisis. What role can companies like AWCL play in addressing this global challenge?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, the global waste management market is enormous and growing rapidly.
Right.
And companies like AWCL, with their innovative and scalable solutions, they have the potential to make a real impact on a global level.
Especially with their focus on turning waste into a resource. It's not just about disposal anymore.
Right. It's about finding ways to create value
Yeah.
from what we would normally throw away.
Exactly. It's about embracing a circular economy where waste is seen as a valuable input rather than just an output.
I love that. And as awareness of this issue grows, I think we're going to see more and more companies following AWCL's lead.
That would be amazing.
Ah.
It's really exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is. Who knows? Maybe someday waste will be as valuable as oil or gold.
Maybe not quite that valuable.
Okay, maybe not. But you get the idea.
I do. The important thing is that we shift our mindset and start seeing waste as an opportunity rather than a burden.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, I think we've all learned a lot from this deep dive. What started as a conversation about an Indian waste management company has turned into a much broader exploration of sustainability innovation and the circular economy.
And it all comes back to AWCL. They're at the forefront of this movement, proving that it's possible to be both environmentally responsible and commercially successful.
They really are an inspiring example. So as we wrap up, I'd like to leave our listeners with a thought to ponder. You know,
Okay.
the next time you throw something away, think about AWCL and their journey from trash to treasure.
I like that.
Think about the possibilities that exist within the waste we generate and ask yourself, what can you do to be a part of the solution?
That's a great way to end our deep dive.
It really is. Thanks for joining me on this fascinating journey.
It's been my pleasure, and until next time, keep on recycling, reducing, and reusing.
Couldn't have said it better myself.